So, okay, I'm going to intro you and then we'll get into the rest. So, all right. So, hi everybody. I'm John Crenshaw. I am president of UFO. We're here with one of our clients, Ken Schmaltz of Tisch Scientific. Tisch has been a client for quite a while now, since I think 2014. I think you actually originally reached out maybe back in 2013. And so maybe Ken, you can introduce yourself, give us like name, position, and then a little bit of detail of what you guys do and why you guys originally reached out to us back then.
Okay. My name is Ken Schmaltz. I'm a sales manager for Tisch Scientific, which is a division of Tisch International. The product itself is a microfiltration device that caters to bioscience, life science, pharmaceutical, and environmental industries. It's more of a sundry item. It's a niche market that has competitors that are very large corporations. So we're always thinking about how to do it better, how to get our share of the market.
So the large corporations, we're kind of going up against some big guys. We have some smaller competitors, right? But the ones we really care about are pretty massive. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to jump into like what we've done on the project so far, like the kind of work we typically do. I think it started a little bit different and it's evolved over time for us to take on more and more stuff. But, way back originally, I think we started with SEO and PPC work, and then we ended up redesigning the site, moved it into a new platform. It's on Magento now. Since then, we've done a lot of SEO work. We've done a lot of PPC on Google Ads, Bing Ads, that sort of thing. Recently, we've done a lot of layout and sort of design changes to help improve conversion rates. And then now I know we're looking at moving to a new e-commerce platform, a modern version, because Magento 1's sort of getting moonlighted. And then we're looking at, I know Andrea and you have been talking about email a little bit, possible CRM stuff. So kind of covering the gamut, right? Anything digital, development, SEO, PPC, marketing, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Anything I missed? Anything major?
The only thing I would add is the whole, which is something you already alluded to, but is the Google perception of the customer's visit. There's a lot of talk about SEO and there's a lot of talk about PPC. Google is an expert at the perception of the customer and how they act on your site. And I think that UFO Rocks has been able to address that issue, and that's something that I think that a lot of folks miss, and that has to do with the website as well. So it's no longer SEO, PPC, build it and they will come, but there's all of the Google experience perception that has to be dealt with as well.
Yeah. Google's measuring how people interact with your site in order to rank it. And then obviously if people enjoy it, if the site's better, if it's a better experience, people are going to like it in general, even outside of Google. But Google's figuring out ways to measure that. And so SEO and PPC is no longer just about, getting the right keywords in the right spot. It's about creating a better experience overall for the user. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Well, I figured we could get into some questions. These are sort of common questions that clients have when they when they're thinking about hiring us, and figure we could get your take on some of these. So I'll jump right in. The first one is, if a potential future client wanted to know what's different with us versus other agencies, how would you answer that question?
That's actually an easy one, because I've been around and we've interviewed many sources. I think what separates the other sources from what UFO Rocks is about is the ability to talk about return on investment. So you spend the money, and then you wonder. Well, we're always going to wonder, but to have that as a measurement, a formal measurement tool of success, is something that UFO Rocks was able to participate with early on with us, and it's an equalizing of risk, I think, that the customer should feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and we actually really like that. We started, I think when we originally started the project, you created a spreadsheet for revenue, and then return on profit, and then return on investment. And we were tracking the cost. I think at that point we were trying to look at the ROI of the website redesign, right? So we were tracking, all right, here's the cost of the website redesign, getting into Magento in the first place. And then we were tracking the increased revenue and profit from that in a spreadsheet. And we've kind of since evolved that into a Google, a Data Studio dashboard, but kind of the same thing. And I think that's great. We've actually been, I think we've been fairly accurate with that, right? Like at first it was pretty, we've kind of been above it, I think, for the most part. And now, I mean, since 2020 hit, we've been kind of having some big months, but yeah, that was, that's kind of what you're referring to, right?
Yes, exactly. We do track it month to month. We it's not just something that we address at the end of the year. It's much more granular than that, and it causes us to act and react, to capitalize on what we're doing well, and then change what we're not doing so well. And so we've enjoyed the interaction. Besides that, you really get to know what UFO Rocks is doing and what our expectations, what their expectations of us are as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not we turn UFO Rocks loose and next thing you know we're making a lot of money. There are responsibilities that we have in this as well.
Yeah, okay. So if a potential future client wanted to know how we are with communication and project management, how would you answer that question?
I think that you guys bring a discipline that we don't have. Simple project management gets you there most of the way, but this is something that is really close to the SEO and PPC and Google experience process. So it requires a different type of project management. Weekly meetings with measurables on both sides are something that UFO Rocks has brought to the party that keeps us on track and you as well.
Yeah. And I think to clarify what that is, we for this project, and it varies by project and how much we're doing and how little we're doing, but for this project, you and Andrea meet, at least you and Andrea, I think a couple people from your team as well, meet once a week just to review the tasks that were assigned last week, come up with tasks that are upcoming, like that are a priority that we think are going to move the needle up for the next week, and just sort of touch base on where everything's at and make sure everything keeps moving.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. What about our technical knowledge? Because that's usually a big question is how much do these guys really know about what they're doing? And you never really know until you get involved with an agency what the answer to that is going to be. So what's your take on that?
I think it started for us is the realization that we didn't know. Nowadays, as I mentioned earlier, it's not build it and they will come. That's gone. And the technical knowledge required now to do well, especially against Fortune 500 companies who we're competing against, it's really tough to come up with that kind of technology internally. You have to rely on somebody that is eating, sleeping, breathing this stuff. The core competency even required to do it well is really hard to find and in place internally. So we've always been impressed with the technical part of this that UFO Rocks brings to the party.
Cool. So what about how invested we are with the project and ownership of results? We talked a little bit about tracking. So obviously there's some ownership on just delivering revenue and profit there. But what about other things? Do you feel like we have, do you feel like the team involved has, takes ownership of the project and really cares about it?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that you have to, because if you're gonna really understand what to recommend, it's not a cookie cutter approach. Every client is so different, and if you don't integrate, then you end up really making a lot of guesses. Whereas, sing Andrea's praises at this point, where she's always asking about the business, and that takes time and effort and hours, but we all look at it from a return on investment.
Yeah. Okay. So I have one question here about any results you can share about the project, and this may not be like revenue numbers or anything, but just are we hitting goals? Are we exceeding goals? What were the expectations, and did we achieve those?
Mm-hmm. Well, the way it works here is I sit down with the president of the company and we come up with a sales growth figure and a controlled profit margin as well. I think every company does that much, but that then becomes a sit down meeting with Andrea, and we start to develop a plan for that. So we have typically set a 20% growth for ourselves, and we have met and or exceeded that on a regular basis. We've never failed at it, and there's in fact it actually gets easier. It's never really easy per se, but when you start building a relationship, like right now she's already knowing what we're going to be doing next year, and what steps we're going to take. So the relationship grows, and she's able to quickly address questions that I'm going to already have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And 20% for us, without PPC and SEO, it would be a very challenging, if not defeating percentage. That's an immense amount of growth. Because
it's such a niche product, essentially.
Exactly. I joke that we're taking scraps from the table, but there are a lot of scraps because there are really, because a lot of companies, large corporate, are not looking at so much of the continuous improvement part of SEO and PPC, and so the things that fall to us are their weaknesses and our strengths.
Yeah, that's we see that a lot. A little bit of a tangent here, but I mean, a lot of B2B spaces, a surprising number of spaces just aren't very skilled digitally, and they don't have the talent, or they don't put the time into it, or invest the budget in it. And it usually, we find the same thing with a lot of clients. There's just so much low-hanging fruit, and it's like, if you can make that part of your differentiator, you really have an advantage, because a lot of these other companies are just not doing great at digital. So yeah.
And I think too that what we had to get over here is the thought of, how do we defeat the customer or the competitor? I'm sorry. Well, you don't really want to defeat them. You need your share, okay? And there is a share that you discover and then go after, and that's how we've been successful.
Yeah, definitely. If a potential future client was thinking about hiring us, or us versus another agency, what would you tell them?
In the selection of an SEO and PPC company, I think that it behooves anyone to go out and interview. And I think, though, that probably if I had to pick the key attribute that I would look for, it would be that company has a willingness to integrate into your company. And I think that's what separates the men from the boys in this situation, is the ability to know how to do that and be able to execute.
Well, I might as well ask the other question too, because it's sort of related, but that is, if you had to go back and make that decision again, would you hire us again, and why?
I've thought about that question. We had many years of business together, so you start thinking about that quite naturally. And the thing is, I would say emphatically, yes, I would re-engage or engage with UFO Rocks. I think because they've stood the test of time, and I mean that sincerely, because this is not a, repeating myself, but not a build it and they will come. You have to continue to learn, and there's only so much we can teach ourselves, and it's extremely limited. We look for UFO Rocks to teach us, and that has made the difference.
Yeah. So last question, Ken, is there anything else you'd like to add that you think people should know?
I think it's extremely important that whoever you choose would be transparent. There's a project management piece of this which helps that, but there's also these frank conversations that I think that you have to have, and you should look for in selecting. Just this morning, Andrea and I were talking about this new choice that we're making for for a shopping cart, and the transparency was amazing there. She gave me her insights and her non-bias opinion about these things, and that sort of transparency is invaluable to us because we really don't know. In fact, I'm in a meeting this morning with her and saying, you know what, maybe we just turn this over to you. What do you think?
Yeah.
And be frank with me and let me know. And we have the ability to do that because of the transparency that you guys offer.
Awesome. Yeah. And just a plug for Andrea too. She's pretty amazing. We're really, I mean, I could speak for myself. I'm really lucky to have her on board, and I know she's added a lot of value to this project for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, cool, Ken. Well, I appreciate all your time and answering all the questions and everything. Obviously, we have immensely enjoyed working with you. We really value this relationship, and so really happy that you could take the time and looking forward to what the future brings.
Happy to do it.
All right, sir. Good deal. Okay, Ken. Well, we'll call that the end of it.